The roar of engines was just seconds away when the girl burst out of the shadows, rain-slick pavement glowing red beneath the neon lights. Her torn jacket flapped behind her as she threw out a trembling hand, standing directly in front of a wall of chrome and leather. The bikers froze, their hands hovering over their throttles. The night was supposed to be ordinary, loud, and lawless. Instead, it cracked open with a single terrified warning from a child who looked like she had outrun the end of the world. Before the story unfolds, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of changing someone's life. The man on the lead bike, the one everyone else seemed to move around like gravity itself, stared at her with a mixture of confusion and irritation. He was huge, weathered by years on the road, his leather vest carrying patches that whispered stories of danger most people never lived to tell. Yet, even he hadn't expected to see a child standing alone this late at night, soaked to the bone, eyes filled with a desperation that felt far too heavy for someone so young. The street around them was quiet except for the distant hum of bar chatter, clinking glasses, and neon signs flickering against the wet ground. Rain dripped from the edge of the bar roof, striking puddles like tiny firecrackers. But nothing sounded louder than the girl's ragged breathing. She didn't step back when the man got off his bike, towering over her, his boots sending ripples through the puddle at her feet. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear of him. It was something bigger, something pressing in on her from behind, something she was trying to escape. She gestured weakly toward the row of powerful bikes behind him, her voice cracking when she forced the words out again. She didn't want them to start the engines. She didn't want the vibration, the thunder, the noise. She didn't say why. But the heaviness in her voice twisted. Something inside the man's chest, something he had long believed had dried up years ago. The others watched from their seats, leaning on handlebars, arms crossed, trying to piece together the scene. Nobody argued, nobody moved. The girl's presence felt like a knife through the night, cutting through swagger, cutting through their usual instinct to brush off anything that wasn't life-threatening. She looked like someone who had lost more than she could afford to lose. Slowly, the man lowered himself to one knee, his weathered gloves dripping with rainwater. Without speaking, he waited, giving her a chance to breathe, to steady herself, to let her guard down enough to reveal whatever storm she was carrying. And when it finally spilled out of her, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was soft, broken, almost too fragile for the harshness of the world she had wandered into. She told them her little brother was hiding in the alley behind the bar, terrified of loud sounds, terrified of engines, terrified of the world since the night their mother's car crashed, as they fled a home that had long stopped being safe. She said he had been shaking for hours, refusing to leave, refusing to speak, and she had no one else to turn to. Everyone in town looked the other way when they saw her. But she thought maybe, just maybe, if she could stop the noise, she could get him to trust her enough to come out. The man didn't hesitate. He stood, turned to the group, and without a word, motioned for them to power down. The neon reflections dimmed off the chrome as switch after switch clicked into silence. The leader took off his jacket and wrapped it around the girl, heavy and warm, the leather smelling of road miles and storms weathered. He told her to show him the way, and she led them through the narrow alley drenched in shadows. What they found there stunned even the toughest among them. A tiny boy curled between two dumpsters, soaked, shivering, hands clamped over his ears, eyes wide. With a fear that pierced straight through even the hardest hearts, the man knelt again, slower this time, careful not to alarm the boy. The group remained behind him, uncharacteristically quiet, their intimidating presence softened by the sight before them. The girl slid down to her knees beside her brother, gently pulling his hands away from his ears. She whispered that it was safe, that these men weren't like the ones they had run from, that these men had listened. The boy's eyes flickered toward the leather giant standing in the rain. His body shook uncontrollably, but the man didn't reach for him or speak. He simply held out a small flashlight from his pocket, turning it on and off, slow and rhythmic, letting the boy focus on something predictable, something calm. Minute by minute, the boy's breathing eased. The girl leaned against her brother, tears mixing with rain, her exhaustion finally settling into her bones. And the man, the one everyone feared, watched over them like a guardian forged from the road itself. He wasn't thinking about reputation or appearances. He wasn't thinking about anything except how two children had found themselves alone in the dark with nowhere to go, and in that moment, something inside him broke open. A memory of a daughter he hadn't seen in years, a reminder of the father he could have been if life had taken a kinder turn. When the boy finally allowed himself to be lifted, the biker wrapped him gently in his arms. The group escorted the siblings into the bar not as intruders, but as guests who needed shelter. The warmth of the lights inside, the murmur of voices, the steady presence of people who had lived rough lives yet still had room for compassion. All of it wrapped around the kids like a blanket. The man ordered food, dry clothes, and a place for them to sit by the heater. The others brought blankets, hot chocolate, even a small stuffed eagle someone had won from a claw machine years ago. They didn't question why they cared so much. They simply did. As the night deepened, the girl looked up at the man who had saved them without knowing anything about them. She saw the softness hiding beneath his scars, the regret etched into his eyes, and the fierce loyalty burning behind them. And something shifted in her, too. She realized not all rough-looking people carried danger. Some carried stories of their own, stories that made them kinder than the world expected. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful stories to life. Before the story ends, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were the biker that night? And as dawn broke over the quiet town, the siblings slept safely for the first time in months, wrapped in borrowed jackets and the unexpected kindness of men the world often misunderstood. The engines stayed silent until they were far away, letting the children rest without fear. And when the bikes finally did roar to life, the sound no longer felt threatening. It felt like a promise that sometimes the people you least expect can become the ones who change everything.